Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. Why is it that some artists are wildly successful while others just barely squeak by? It may seem like an unfathomable mystery how some are earning six figures while other more talented artists are struggling. Maria Brophy has dedicated 20 years of her life to researching the specific strategies that successful artists follow. After applying these strategies to her husband Drew Brophy's career, Maria grew his art sales to multiple six figures yearly. So please stay tuned. We have with us guest Maria Brophy. She is the author of the book Art, Money, Success. We will do a deep dive in the topic. How do you make money as a creative, as an artist? So please keep listening and stay tuned. If you are a longtime listener, you know that we always reserve just the first few minutes of the show just to kind of tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Houston and the Gulf Coast region when it comes to financial literacy. We are right in the middle of kicking off Houston Money Week. Actually, we started last quarter of 2018, but we're talking about Houston Money Week 2019. That's going to be in April. Houston Money Week is a financial literacy initiative. It's national. It coincides with Financial Literacy Month, which is a national thing, but Houston Money Week is the Houston representation of that. Now, when we say Houston Money Week, it used to be just a week. Used to be a day. Used to be a week. Now it's an entire month, and then we kick it off early. It's like a big party that you plan and you plan and you plan, and it finally happens. And so in April we will have Houston Money Week, but we are building up to it. So I encourage people, if you are interested in attending any of the seminars, the workshops, they are free and open to the public and all different types of topics. I know in April we're heading up to tax month, and so our nonprofits that are part of the citywide initiative are participating in something called VITA, the VITA program, and that is free tax preparation for low to moderate income. You can find out more information about that by going to Houston Money Week's website, which is www.houstonmoneyweek.org. We meet every month at the United Way and United Way 411. That's the information line that's part of the United Way kind of a group of nonprofits, can point you to the different VITA centers as well. So if you give them a call, if you're looking for help in that area, you can give them a call, tell them your zip code, and they'll tell you a provider in the area. With that, we have one other announcement for Houston Money Week. As part of that, I want to say this is my third or fourth year that I've done a talk at the Houston Hispanic Foundation's College Planning Day. They really devote an entire day to that. That's going to be on February 16th. I am one of the speakers, but there are going to be multiple speakers there. We're kind of getting it ramped up, and such a great event. It's huge. They bus in several kids from around the city, in the Gulf Coast region, not just Houston. And so it is in the George Brown Convention Center, which is gigantic, and basically take it over for a day. This is free as well. And if you're parents and you're looking for help when it comes to college planning, there are free meals there at the event. Lots of really good information. You're going to hear more about that as we get closer to the event, but I just want to get that on your radar there early on. With that, let's go ahead and get Maria on the line here. Maria, are you there?
I am here. Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, well, this is my favorite topic. Money matters.
Absolutely. So tell us. Usually, I'll read your bio, but your bio is kind of interesting. You've got a lot of different stuff in there. So I was wondering if you might be able to share some things about yourself so that listeners can get to know you just a little bit better.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so, all right, I started my journey in the exciting world of insurance, and I did that for about 15 years. I worked in the insurance industry, which it actually helped to lead me into my next life, which was getting into the art business. So I left insurance because I met a guy who I eventually married, who's an artist, a professional artist, my husband Drew. And when I met him, I was just suddenly drawn to this idea that with the right amount of marketing, the right business plan, the right business model, and so forth, I could help my husband Drew take his little art business that he had going, which at the time he was painting surfboards for a living. And granted, he was 25 years old. He's a lifelong surfer, and so it fit perfectly with his lifestyle. But I saw that there was greater potential there. And so eventually I left the insurance industry and started managing his art career and managing his art. And we took him from being a surfboard artist to the most licensed surf artist in history, meaning licensing his art for hundreds of products. And we've developed a collector base that's global. So we've really taken it pretty far. So the way I ended up helping other artists is we had so many artists coming to us when they started to see the success we were having. And I would say this was probably 2005, 2006. I had so many people coming to me I for help that I started a blog, and I used that as a platform to try to give answers to these same questions that just kept coming up from every artist that I met, which eventually led into consulting and helping other artists. And then that's what led to me writing my book, Art, Money, Success. So that's the journey in a nutshell.
Absolutely. So one thing that you said right away was that your husband, he was an artist, he was doing the surfboards, but that he had a business there, and that you saw potential for it to get bigger. A lot of artists, they don't even have that business plan at all. So there may not even be a good place to start. So you came out with the book Art, Money, and Success. Can you tell us, what would you tell somebody who is a budding artist, who is either a musician or a painter or something like that, who is wanting to make a living doing that thing that they're passionate about?
The one thing that I really stress is to treat your art business like a business. That is the number one mistake artists make. So when you see a starving artist, it's because they are not treating their business like a business. Now, you could say maybe their art isn't good enough, but you know what? Surprisingly enough, it doesn't have to be that good. I see art out there that is, in my opinion, not that great, and the artists are doing really well. What they're doing really well is they're marketing, and they're making a business out of their art. And art is very subjective. So what one person loves, another person's going to hate, and vice versa. There's always a market for what you're doing. It may be small, it may be large, but there's always a market for something.
Can you give us some examples, maybe specifically with your husband's business, how that worked, how that either turned it around or how that was implemented?
Yeah. So, as I said, when I met him in 1996. His full-time income was coming from painting surfboards because he was living in the small town of San Clemente, California. This is one of the surfing meccas of the country. And so people were hiring him to paint their surfboards, and surfboard makers and surfboard sellers were hiring him to paint their surfboards. So that's what he was doing full-time. Well, his paintings got popular in the little tiny niche of surfing. So other companies that were action sports related companies, small startups mostly, were coming to him saying, hey, I really like your art on surfboards. Do you think you could design a T-shirt for me? Now, so it just kind of grew out of there. And what we saw was that when you put art on certain types of products, and in this case it was a surfboard to start with, right, you could sell more of that product. So we got this idea that if we could find companies that made really good products, but they needed artwork to sell the product, that might be a good licensing deal. And so our first ever licensing deal was with Whammo Boogie Boards. And Whammo had a problem. Their problem was they couldn't get their boogie boards sold in core surf shops. And when I say core, I mean like the surf shops where all the cool kids hang out, right? They couldn't get these core surf shops to carry their boogie boards. No matter what they did, they couldn't get them in there. And so we had meetings with them, and we said, look, if we put this bright, colorful, fun, funky, slightly edgy artwork on your boogie boards, you're going to be able to get them into the core surf shops. And it worked. It worked phenomenally. And the way a licensing deal works is the artist keeps ownership to the artwork, but they license it to the manufacturer for a specific usage for a short period of time. So in the case of the boogie boards, we said, look, you can use the artwork just for boogie boards for 2 years, and you have to pay royalties. You have to pay a percentage of what sells. Well, what started out as just a few designs, we ended up designing their entire line of boogie boards for 7 years in a row.
Wow. And
they ended up selling hundreds of thousands of these boogie boards that not only sold in the U.S., but also all over the world, in Hawaii and even as far as South Africa. So it was a huge success. And that was our first, it's almost as though we sort of fell into that, but we were looking for a way to make money off of the art as somewhat of a passive income stream. And we found it. And from that point forward, we said, okay, we're going to find more deals like this. And that became our focus for a long time, was just finding companies that made a quality product that was in alignment with the style of the art and set up these passive income streams.
I love it. I'm gonna pause right there because you've said quite a bit of stuff that I want to just kind of highlight, and for listeners there, treat it like it's a business. You talked about the idea of having a marketing plan, or the idea that some artists may not think that their art is as good as other art, but it is subjective. And honestly, it doesn't have to be to go this route because of what's available out there. You talked about, we gave a really good example of your husband's surfing business where there was a niche, and instead of going kind of wide, he went deep into that niche not trying to please. He found a market out there and was able to go deep into it. And then once you found that, you mentioned matching good products with good art. With the Whammo boogie boards, he was able to kind of replicate that same. I'll say the stars aligning there for that one deal. He was able to replicate it and look out for those additional licensing deals. Now, your book, do you go in depth about how to do this?
Yeah. So my book it's almost like a coaching course in a book. It actually is a coaching course in the book because it starts out with figuring out what you want. And so I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about that because a lot of artists will say, well, I know what I want. I want people to love my art. I want my art to be well known. Well, what else do you want? I mean, you have to think about what it is that you want, and you have to know what you want. And then from there, every decision that you make will either bring you closer to that or further away from it. And that also goes along with how much income you want to make. So I go into that in the book, helping you figure out how to structure your income and break it out, make an income goal for the year, break it out into 12 months. And by doing this, your business decisions will lead you to reaching those income goals.
So that's powerful to be able to do that because a lot of times, whether it's a painter or a musician or even a martial artist, they'll do what they want to do, what they love, what they're passionate about, and hope that the money follows. But they may set themselves goals and competing, or they may set themselves goals and like, this is what I want to do with my art. But sitting down and putting the financial part to it, putting a price tag on it, putting a dollar sign as to how much does it cost to keep, not only to just keep afloat, but to get where I want to be, is super important. Let's kind of shift for a second. What do you see as some of the biggest roadblock for artists when it comes to making a living doing what they want to do?
They want to please everyone, and it hurts them financially. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see artists make is they give their art away or they sell it for really cheap, their art and their services. They give it away because they think it's going to get them exposure, but it doesn't. Rarely do you get exposure by giving your art away to charities or to companies or for different uses. It's rare to have it come back. You have to make these decisions as to what you're doing with your art, how much you're charging, what you're going to give away. They have to be made in a mindful way. I know artists who give art away to charities over and over and over again, and they go broke over it. They go broke. And I mean, this is not just something I've seen 10 times. It's something I've seen 1,000 times in the 20 years I've been doing this. And they say, but, I want to be generous. But what happens is you lose track of, you get sucked up into everybody else's agenda and you're not running your business like a business. So give mindfully. If you want to give to charities, I recommend giving money. Give money to charities because money is trackable, it's traceable, it's write-offable. You can't write off a painting that took you 3 weeks to paint. But all you can write off is the cost of the canvas and the paint. You can't write off those 3 weeks. The IRS in the United States does not allow it. So you just lost 3 weeks of time and you lost 3 weeks of revenue. And so I'll give you a scenario. This happens constantly to artists that as they become known particularly in a local community, and this happens to us all the time. I had a friend call me and say, we'd love to have Drew do the artwork for this big event we have going. It's for this charity that I'm running. And what they're asking for is an illustration. And the project would be a 3-week project for my husband, Drew. And I said, okay, I'll give you a price quote. I'll put together a proposal. Oh, we were hoping he'd do it for no charge because this is such a good charity and we know he loves his hometown. And I said, well, what you're asking for is 3 weeks of our income, 3 weeks of our revenue. That's what you're asking for. And he got it when I explained it that way. But most artists are not looking at it like that. All they're looking at is, oh, I'm going to get this exposure out of this opportunity.
That's a very important point when it comes to the roadblocks. They're not wanting to please everybody, not giving it away necessarily. I could see how it would cheapen the art, the value of your time and your effort. Being mindful when it comes to making decisions, maybe give your time, money, but not necessarily your art, because it is in some way devaluing there. But being mindful about those decisions. What tips would you give to artists who are trying to sell their art easily or negotiate nicely?
It's really important to develop good relationships with collectors. And for an artist who is just starting out, I strongly recommend you get outside of your house or your studio and create events or attend events where you can show your work. It doesn't have to be at a gallery. You can team up with a local bank or real estate office or interior decorator or a local charity that puts on events where you donate a small portion of the proceeds. But what I'm saying is get out and show your work, create opportunities to show your work, to talk about your work, and that's how you start to develop a collector base. Also, the other thing is having a niche, like you mentioned earlier, and as we talked about earlier, a niche is really powerful. So for my husband, Drew, he was in the niche of surfing, surf art, which is a very tiny niche. There aren't that many surfers in the world, and they all live on the coast. And of that niche, only half of them can afford art, and of that, only a small percentage actually likes art. So it's a very small pool, but the smaller the pool of people, actually, the more powerful your marketing is, because you can go directly to where your people are. So let's say your niche is, let's say you love horses. It's your passion, and so that's what you paint. You create art that depicts horses and that lifestyle, the equestrian lifestyle. That's an easy one. You go to equestrian-themed events, trade shows. You exhibit at places where other people are passionate about that niche, and you can do that with any niche.
So those are three. I'm gonna unpack some of the stuff that we just talked about here, because those are three very specific things there. One, you talked about the niche and it being very a small pool. You gave an example of your husband as a surf art. Half of them can afford of it, half of them liked it, but he was able to get in front of the people who did. So instead of going wide, and as you mentioned earlier, that roadblock of trying to please everybody, go deep and getting in front of the people who want what you're providing there. You also talked about developing relationships when it comes to selling your art easily, getting those relationships in place. Showing your work, creating opportunities, getting out there, getting in front of people when it comes to that. Tell us a little bit about licensing. For some people that might be intuitive, and for some people they might see it as a big roadblock. Do I need to be an attorney to make money doing this? What do people need to know when it comes to licensing?
Well, licensing, you can really simplify it in this way. Think of it as renting your art to a company to create a product, putting your art on it, and you're essentially renting it in exchange for a fee. Now, renting art is not a real term used in the licensing world, but it's a good way to help people understand how it works. So when you walk into a Target, for example, and you're going shopping in a Target store, you look at the greeting cards. Most of the greeting cards that have art on them, the greeting card companies do not own that art. They license that art from artists, and they pay that artist a percentage of everything that sells. So there are some greeting card artists out there that are making six figures a year because they just know how to create art that sells greeting cards. And then there are other greeting card artists out there that maybe only have 20 designs on greeting cards, so maybe they make $4,000 a year. So it's all over the board. But no, you don't have to be an attorney. Luckily now, today, there's so much information online. There's a lot of free information, and you can hire people to help you with it, to help you understand it. But there's a lot of info on licensing, and actually that's my next book. It's really deep into licensing. That's not going to be out for another year, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. The thing is, for your art to be licensable, it just has to be able to work well on products. So think coffee mugs, think home goods, clothing, just about anything you see in a Target store. It's, the next time you're in Target, look around and look at all the products and think, most of the products that have a design on them were designed by an artist that is getting paid royalties for that.
One of the things you talk about in the book is trusting your own creative intuition. Can you give us an example of what you mean by that?
Yes, and I'm really glad you asked that question, because artists, and we all do this, we're all creative in some way or another. But artists can get very intimidated by seeing what another artist has created. When you look at somebody who's successful, and you're just at the stage where you're dreaming of having that success for yourself, and you're nowhere near it yet, you might question what you're doing, and you're reading what other people are doing, and you say, well, this one artist says never make print reproductions of your art, only sell originals. But then this other artist says they sell print reproductions of everything they do. So an artist can go back and forth and question every decision they make, or question their own creativity. They might be driven to create something that is completely unusual and strange, and maybe other people might not like it. But I really want to urge everybody to go with what is driving you. If you're driven to paint in a certain way, or to paint a certain theme, or something that's different from what everybody else is doing, but for some reason you have this strong desire to do it, do not question that desire that you have. If nobody else is doing it, don't question it. Just keep doing what it is that you want to do, and eventually the world will come around with it. The world will come around and like it if you keep doing that which you're driven to do.
I love it. I love it. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. We are speaking with Maria Brophy. She is the author of the book. Remind me of the book title again?
Art, Money, Success.
And if somebody wanted to get a copy of that, where would they be able to get a copy of it?
They can get it on Amazon.com. Just look up Art Money Success or look up my name, Maria Brophy.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.